So Jeff, let's talk about some of the things that a new construction company owner should consider when bidding on a job.
Well, there's a lot of things to consider. We're going to go over just a few things, that kind of get everybody's mind in the same path, and things that are important to me, to utilize my business and make sure that I'm looking out for the best interest of it and making sure it's a profitable business.
All right.
One thing that I would always, check first and foremost is to make sure that you are bidding on a project that you have the resources and the means to complete. And what I mean by that is, if you are awarded this project, you're going to fund it. Your portion of the work, you're going to buy materials, you're going to do payroll and insurance, so on and so forth. So make sure that you're not overstepping your boundaries to where that you don't have enough capital on hand that you can provide this job with the materials and resources needed.
So if you only have $82 in the bank,
You should probably better look, start off a lot smaller.
All right. What's something?
Next thing, is, most all projects will have bidder qualifications, and of some sort, to make sure that your company meets the requirements that they are asking for, whether it be insurance requirements, background checks, depending on what kind of project you're bidding on, make sure that your company is suitable for that project, because time is money. You don't want to waste your time bidding on a project and find out they can't award it to you because you don't have the qualifications to do it. Another item is, it's like we talked about, is make sure you have the right resources, and there's always going to be a deadline on the project, and also a time to start. You want to make sure that if you already have projects going and the projected start date for this project is 2 months from bid date, you need to look at your workload and make sure that you have the available equipment, available men to start that project, in that amount of time.
So what can happen if you are not able to meet the deadline on the job?
But if, a lot of times, and most jobs have some sort of liquidated damages. Every once in a while you see one with $500 a day, sometimes $1,000 a day, sometimes $1,500, $2,000 a day. Liquidated damages, and that is for every day that you go past the completion, the projected completion date. And so, that can get the man's pocketbook pretty quick and could possibly put him out of business, especially if he's a new construction business just getting started.
Sounds like it. All right. What's something else?
Always know your drawings, know the job, first and foremost. Look at your drawings, if somebody comes up to you and gives you a job to bid and say it's out of your county or somewhere you're not familiar with, know the ins and outs of that job, of that project, know how you're going to get equipment in and out, know how you're going to deal with deliveries, get materials on site, off site, and just know your drawings, what they consist of, and as far as your scope of work, what you're bidding on, know that you got everything covered.
Can you always get all the information you need from the drawings, or is there ever a need to actually go to the job site?
Yes, you always need to visit the site, look at, because you've got existing conditions, and, it may be a site that, got some demolition work, it may be an existing site that's going to be tore down and start over, fresh, and, could be, terrain variations, and everything else, you need to just study the site, go make a visit.
All right. What's something else?
Well, we talked about a minute ago, about the start date, and make sure that you can, that's very important, make sure that you can, because especially if you're dealing with a new general contractor you never dealt with before, or new city or municipality, you don't want them to have the perception that, hey, your business is going to be here to start work on such and such date, and then you can't make it. I just want to emphasize that again, that you need to really pay attention to that and make sure that you can mobilize and start this when they're ready for you.
Well, if I'm not able to start on that date, what can I do? Any way?
Yeah, there's other things you can do. I mean, you can look at, subbing your work out to someone else or hiring another crew and renting equipment, to make that job happen, but you need to, uh, plan for that in your bid proposal.
Okay,
If you know that you can't possibly meet that start date, or the chance you can't, you need to figure on enough money in your bid to cover that in case you have to sub it out or have to hire someone.
so that's gonna cost you more money.
Yes.
Before you're part of the job.
Exactly.
So that, all right.
Uh, then, you want to look at, it should be available. Most sites, nowadays have a soils report, a geo report, especially if you're in excavation work or utility work, you want to look at the type of soils you're dealing with. And, it may be a unclassified project. If it is, the liability is going to fall on me.
Unclassified, what does that mean?
Well, just like whatever the site is, whatever it takes to get it to the proposed, site that you're looking at, the finished product. If you got rock, or if you got bad soils, you got to undercut, ship out, and then you got to haul good material in to make it work, then, you've got to figure that in your price. And so it's very important to see what kind of soils and stuff you're working with, what your rock levels are, and just make sure that you got all bases covered, and, you're not going to be going in the hole right off the bat.
Well, what if there is no soils report? Then,
Well, then you need to exclude, you need to have qualifications in your bid, in your exclusion and qualifications, you need to exclude rock, exclude any unsuitable soils, and, just protect yourself, whoever you're bidding to, your GC or whoever you're currently bidding to, they will, they're used to that sort of thing, so they know they've got to pick it up somewhere if you exclude it.
all right. What's up now?
You need to make sure that when you are looking at a job, don't go into it, 1 or 2 days, try to put a number together. Make sure you got ample time, to put together a decent bid for that project that gives you time to study the job, study the site, and just do your homework, make sure that you know the ins and outs of that project before you ever start. If you get someone that says, hey, I want you to do this project, get bids in 2 days, I need you to give me a number. You've got to, as you hate to turn down work, you're like, well, I want to do this for you, but, I need 7 days, or I need 10 days, depending on the size of the job. Just make sure that you are covered and have enough time to put your bid together.
So it's better to pass on a job than it is to try to crunch a bid at the last minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, most definitely, because, if you go into a project and you miss something, it may be something that's, crucial to that project that you miss, and it may, have a large monetary value to it. And if you miss it, then the GC's not out, the owner's not out, it's you. The bidder, you're the one that's took liability for it, so it's gonna cost you or your insurance company money and could potentially put you out of business.
All right. What's up next?
You need to make sure that you know the specifications for this job. You may be used to dealing with one area or working in one area, and this may be out of your comfort zone. And, most municipalities and codes departments and different cities and different counties, have different specifications for the type of work and what they're looking for. Just make sure that you know the specs for that particular project that you're going to be involved in before you get started, to make sure you got all your bases covered. And, when you're pricing a project, you've got to have materials to do it. And you need to reach out to your suppliers, you may have a good relationship with one supplier or 2 suppliers, but whatever, whether it be stone, pipe, storm drainage, whatever materials you're purchasing, don't just base it on one quote. Get multiple quotes to where you're getting the best price, that's going to benefit you and help you to get that project.
All right. Yes, one more.
One more. There's always changes on drawings. It's kind of like we talked about, make sure you have ample time to bid it. Engineers, most times they're on the gun too. They're trying to crank out a project as quick as possible. Well, they miss stuff, and then they have to go back, as we as bidders ask questions, then they add addendums. And, you know, always make sure that you know how many addendums have been out, make sure you reviewed all of them, and always ask whoever you're bidding to, you know, that you need the latest, addendum that's out on this project, make sure you got all your bases covered.
All right. So Jeff, why should we listen to you? What do you know about this stuff?
But I've been doing this now as far as, I've been my whole life, since I was, you know, probably 14, 15 years old. And, I've been doing this professionally now for probably 15 years. Yeah.
Especially estimating?
Estimating and project management, yes.
All right.
You know, I've learned lessons the hard way, because I didn't have somebody to tell me, you know, what we're trying to help other people avoid, but, you know, the old saying is, I went to school of hard knocks.